It's a little bit more tough to be funny with someone else in the room, actually.
Yeah, we have an auditor in here today.
So who's that? Now we need to say it,
Now
actually.
we need to say it. Yeah. No, it's our wonderful intern.
Yes.
She's going to see how we produce a podcast.
Anna.
And I'm pushing her a bit to do an episode on our internal. I need to work her a bit, get her convinced.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. What I was up to this weekend?
Tell me. I cannot wait to hear.
I was in a dance-off with a drag queen. Really?
I think this introduction feels a bit over-engineered, Mikkel. I mean, come on.
We can cut that out. That's fine.
Let's see.
But actually, we're going to talk about something way more fun than dancing with a drag queen.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're going to talk about why 10 times 7 is not 70. It's 100.
It's 100 instead.
And I'm obviously not great at math. We know that.
Yes.
So we're going to talk a bit about that. And maybe before we give the answer, I think it's always a funny conversation on how you double revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And especially now, we talked a bit about budgets are being reduced, but targets, they remain the same.
Yep.
And that's a really tall order.
No, a lot of investors are basically expecting you to suddenly snap to efficient growth. So you've been operating for the last 2-3 years on very inefficient growth. And now you have a quarter to go from that to, hey, you should really be hitting this 12-month payback thing we told you about. So I think that is the expectation out there, right? And basically, how that's being translated is growth roughly remains the same. Mm-hmm. Let's just say there's a bit of a haircut. But budgets for sure, like minus 50% or something like that.
Yeah. And I'm a fan of Winning by Design. I know you also really love those guys and the work they're doing. And Jaco over there, he talked about actually this 10% rule that we're going to get into, which is really if you can improve just 7 things, 10% throughout your funnel, that will equal to 100.
Yeah, I think the math is not exactly 100, but basically now the math avid listener will realize, there's a compounding thing here, and that's obviously what this is about, right? You basically kind of look at your funnel, and you need to find 7 spots that you can increase by 10%. And if you do that, you'll get to roughly 100% over the course of that year or that time period.
Yeah, and I mean we've both benefited from this kind of, let's say, incremental improvement versus radical change, right? And I think we've talked a couple of times that it's always interesting to look at those big bangs you can do because it's a massive bet, rallies a lot of people, there's a lot of things that needs to happen, but there's just a big risk associated with that.
No, for sure. And I think a lot of executives fall really in love with the big shiny object kind of thing. And I think the RevOps approach to that problem is really much more about, instead of releasing a big new product or doing something bold in the US or, jumping into the enterprise, it's really much more focused about the incremental improvements over time. Where can we tweak? And if we just tweak often enough, just even a little bit, the whole thing will compound and you will have a lot of growth suddenly coming out of this.
Yeah. And I think I recall when I looked into implementing, for example, Scrum, which is agile framework where you really want to release fast and iterate and improve. I think the big takeaway there was when I looked at some of the bigger projects we had run, usually they would go over time because it's really hard to estimate how long will this project really take. And the same actually goes for the results. It's hard to estimate the results. So not only were we late, but we also didn't get the results we wanted. And that's, there's a lot of risk on one item, which is why this 10% rule is a really clever way of going about growth.
Yeah, and I think especially the bigger bets, there's something that's called desirability bias that kicks in. Simply because you want it to be successful, you then plan it to be successful. But none of this really means that it's going to be successful, actually. No. Right? And I think some of the smaller bits that you can understand much better, you can time box it and you will still go over for sure. And sometimes you will hit the improvement and sometimes you won't. But instead of having one big thing, you might actually having you might have end up having 10 or 20 of those things, right? In this case, specifically 7. And I think to, come back to the whole budget conundrum here, the reason why 7 times 10 is 100 is interesting is that the usual way around how people think about growth and think about doubling is basically by doubling all the inputs, which basically means they double all the cost, right? Meaning you need to, hire the double amount of, outbound reps that you have. You need to double your ad budgets. You need to double the amount of people in your marketing team. And that will result in you needing to double the amount of account executives that you have in your team as well. And by doubling those inputs, you hopefully, ideally, in many scale-ups, that's actually the case. And that's, by the way, a good thing. You will double your output. But in this current unique situation, just doubling the input maybe isn't even a possibility. So you need to find other ways to actually achieve that, doubling of outputs, or, maybe you want to even go further than 2x, right? It's always a mix of those things.
And I think so we got a bit of feedback that it's very no BS, what we're talking about here. So what we should do now is actually transition the conversation. So we've talked about this concept. Let's actually bring a couple of examples from basically our funnel. And I know you've mentioned one thing you did with a form, actually.
Yeah. So again, right, going kind of one step back here, really what we are talking about now is 7 different things that we have actually done in our past that increased our funnel at that step by 10%. And I think the purpose here is to get you guys thinking and going on, hey, what else could we actually be doing, right? And it's not only hiring more people, there's a bunch of other things actually out there in the funnel that we could do, right? And I think some of these examples that we're going to go through, they're a bit, you might say they're hacky, right?
Some of them could be dated even.
So, yeah, probably some of them are probably dated and like maybe yawning. But let's see about that, right?
We'll go over them fast if you're...
So you mentioned demo form fields.
Yeah,
so
classic.
that's a classic. Again, this is only a thing that the smaller the customer and the larger the volume, the higher the impact will be. So really, if you have an enterprise motion with 10 solid inbounds a month, this is probably not useful for you. But if you're a SMB, mid-market, and especially obviously if you're almost scratching on the B2C side, then something like that is really, really useful. We actually hired an agency to help us with CRO. In that case, it's not the chief revenue officer, it's conversion rate optimization. And they went about this in a highly professional and academic way. I'm more than happy to maybe share the link somewhere. Journey Further, actually, that's what they're called, whatever. And one of the things that they started looking into is basically kind of our demo form field, and this was at Planday. And in Planday, in the beginning, we had and for some reason, we also still needed that. I think 7 or 10 different fields of information that had to be entered in order to jump into the trial environment. Some, limitations, requirements for product, whatever. And basically, we did a couple of experiments and see there, if you split those 10 fields up, not in, instead of having it in one long form, think about it scrolling on your iPhone to fill this in, to basically have it split in different steps, right? And then a couple of psychology pieces kick in, like the first 3 is like, oh, that's not so difficult. Let's put in, my name and my email and so forth. Then you click to the next one and then you realize there's a next one. But now you're already 3 fields in. So how bad can it be to add another 3 or 4? And, then once you're at 7, you're either frustrated or you're going to, give us the last 2 fields. And actually what it resulted in was, I think, actually more than a 10% lift at that specific stage. Yeah. Right? Let's just, recap. This is not for, now, revenue increased 10% necessarily, but at that specific stage, 10% more of people that wanted to go into the trial environment were actually, went through that step of the funnel.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny. So we did another piece just like this. We would never have done it with all the bigger projects because it's a small problem. It's only going to improve, a fraction of a fraction almost, right? But because you do multiple of those, it is going to compound. And one of the things we had learned was we got a lot of internal feedback from like employees not being able to find our blog on our website. And we had a team writing on that blog. We were, highly invested in building it out. And there were other pieces they couldn't find. And we basically saw in the data that the navigation was just not working. It made no sense. Even on mobile, there were problems. And again, if we had, taken another route to build, redesign the blog or do another bigger thing, we would never have gotten into it. So we addressed the problem and actually, also increased at a very high funnel. This was not even at a lead level, but at a very higher step in our funnel, improved the click-through rates to our blog, to our case studies. And that also has an impact because it helps build a relationship with those people who want to get to understand you. Right?
Yeah. And by the way, all of these conversion rate optimizations, and when the word is CRO, it's really usually website based, but you have a lot of different conversion points also later in your funnel.
Yeah.
So this is actually what we're seeing today when we are talking to some of our customers or prospects, and then there's a CFO on the call. It's all about increasing conversion rates for those kind of types.
Yeah.
Because they know 1000% that, focusing on conversion rates equals efficiency, equals, increased CAC payback, equals more growth with less money, right? So the whole talking point always is around conversion rates everywhere across the funnel. So really, starting a conversation, on that topic in your executive team or kind of bringing it up to executive team will be very welcome right now.
And I mean, you can look at it like a store, right? You can bring more people through the store and then have the same amount of average basket value or average, order value. But then you can also, at the same time, increase the amount of purchases being made, meaning kind of what we're doing here. You both want to work at getting more volume, but also converting more of that volume, right? I think the feedback you will get internally is super powerful in this kind of approach with increments. And that's, again, one of the others was highly driven by feedback. The other nuggets we found, we could not see it in the data, by the way, but the only way you could contact us was request a demo. That was the only way you could get in touch with us. And that's not really great if you want to just figure out, does this product support this software I'm using or whatever it really is. So what we did was we basically implemented Drift, so web chat. A lot of companies have done it by now, but I think the difference is we didn't make it into a big project. We implemented it in 2 weeks because basically we just needed someone on the chat, and we needed a simple way to figure out, hey, if someone then wants an actual demo, how do we do it? And we had a spreadsheet. And at this stage, we had a big tech stack, we had a lot of reporting, but we decided to keep it simple just to validate whether it actually had an impact. And you know what? We produced, I think, 20 opportunities more a month. That was, a significant volume for us at that stage.
So that is obviously the first question you're going to get from anyone in sales is like, well, wouldn't these guys have signed up anyway?
Yeah, and I think no is actually the answer because you get such a short amount of time to convince people to talk with you. And especially if you're in a highly competitive industry where there are substitutes, well, then they're just going to go elsewhere and see whether there's an answer and then a fit there, right? And I think that opened up an opportunity for us to talk with someone who said, hey, do you integrate with software X? And we were going to, yes, what are you trying to solve? And then they said, well, I need to do this and that, and you could do some more value on top, right?
No, 1,000%. And I think, to really put this into perspective, so this was with Falcon, we were selling social media management software, and we're kind of in the mid-market, and we had a couple of competitors that were basically SMB, self-service, full-on product-led growth, edging into our area. And everyone that, came to us because they felt like, those are the right guys, but then they couldn't find pricing. They only could request a demo. It's like, oh no, this is going to be expensive, and I actually don't want to talk to a sales guy. Let me go somewhere else, right? So I think this whole, hey, let's have a chatbot in place really helped to catch some of those people. And actually on that point, it's not on our list here, but putting pricing online.
Okay, left turn.
and maybe this is a whole episode by itself, but actually one quick piece of advice. If all of your competitors are putting pricing online, you should be thinking about putting pricing online. And this is really, hey, there are 1,000 other reasons, by the way. But the problem is, if people are coming to your website and they're comparing you against those 2-3 others,
you're not going to be considered.
And sometimes, funny enough, they have some intern researching this, and they don't want to reach out and kind of ask you for a price and stuff, and then you're basically kind of being removed from the list, basically, right? So maybe that's another 10%, but that's going to be a fun executive conversation. Right?
Yeah, I feel like that's maybe 2 episodes on how to navigate that. that whole thing. I mean, so that was really the marketing side.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just one step in the funnel. There's also then, you generate some leads and some opportunities. That's when it passes over to sales. And I know you've spent a lot of time obsessing over sales.
No.
So I'm curious to see, what you've experienced there.
Yeah, let's go. So obviously we at Growbuzz, we look at the whole spectrum. Actually, we're not only looking at marketing or sales, we look at the whole thing. So really kind of the next 3 items here are dedicated to sales predominantly. And one easy one, and I think a lot of thought has gone into that over the years. Basically, we had an outbound team that was consistently, and we're talking 50, 60 people at this point in time, consistently got to, on average, 10 meetings held. 10 meetings held per month per outbound rep. And then we kicked off a whole effort to try and get to 11 of those. Yeah. And that was an effort across increasing commissions, buying some more tooling for researching, adding some more management headcount to make sure we have the right ratios and so forth. It worked out to a little bit of an extent, not fully, by the way. But if you get this done, if you get from 10 to 11 or get from 9 to 10 or whatever, this is a 10% gain that's pretty massive when you think about the scale we had at that point, right? And also it was really a massive gain in terms of CAC payback improvement, because suddenly with the exact same amount of resources, you were able to generate 10% more business, right? And by the way, I think this is one of the things that many CFOs tend to miss, is not only looking at the conversion rate, but also the per unit. So this is very technical, but the per unit production, right? And in this case, SDRs going from 10 to 11, that is just as much of a conversion rate gain, or efficiency gain rather, than only focusing on a 10% conversion rate improvement, right? So this is really on the outbound SDR side. Not sure if everyone is having something like that in your team, but really trying to get them up from where they are right now to 1 more a month is actually a massive improvement. Another one is, and I'm not sure how much this is now a standard by now. It's actually in a world of recurring revenues, you really want to steer away from recurring discounts. Yeah, what does that mean? Well, you obviously have monthly recurring or annual recurring revenues, and that's what you're really proud of. Your investors looking into that. But sometimes your sales team will ask you to, approve a discount. And instead of making this an infinite discount, 10%, 20% for forever, basically put in place something that limits that discount to the first year. Hey, I can only give you, the 10% discount, 20% discount for the first year, and then we need to go up to the normal rate. Or you can even say like, hey, we started calling it the introduction period. So basically the first 2-3 months of onboarding. So we usually did it in a month, but it doesn't matter. We basically said like, hey, for the first couple of months, we basically give you the software for free. So we give you the first 2 months off, or first 3 months off, which basically then accounted for a 20-25% discount for the year, right? But then resulted also in capping that discount to that point in time. And you won't feel the impact on day one. You will feel the impact a little bit later on. But depending on how you account for it also, you might see a natural upsell, so net retention rate actually happening from that, right? So it's really powerful. And then maybe the last one here on the sales side, and again, right, this is around ACV. So the same with the one-off discount, but this one now is implement a discount hierarchy. And sounds super boring. I know.
We lost the listeners.
Yeah, there you go. But really what this means is instead of the first point of, prospect asks sales rep, hey, can you give me a discount? Ooh, this is really expensive and, my budget and whatever. Instead of the discount, instead of the rep going to, okay, 20%, introduce a discount hierarchy, introduce different steps in here. And the first step could be, well, I can give you the first 2 months off. The next step could be, well, I could give you 10% of the first year. Or, hey, if you sign up for 2 years, I can give you this kind of discount. Blah, 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 blah. Create like 5 or 6 or 7 different steps. And then only the bottom rung should be, okay, 20% in perpetuity, forever for you. And the psychology here is everyone will always ask you for a discount. There's no way around. Everyone will ask you, they will expect a discount. And instead of jumping to, the best thing that you can offer, you kind of go through the list. And prospects will basically, not have the mental stamina in this negotiation to keep asking you again and again and again and again and again. Right? They will ask once, twice, 3 times, and then this will feel very awkward at that point, and then they usually stop.
I think it's also important to note, usually when you start talking price, it's because someone actually wants to buy it.
Yeah.
And I recall when I've, went out and purchased software and collaborated with you to kind of land it at the right level, there's always the final push where it hurts a little bit on you as the potential buyer to go and ask again. But it is a thing, and some they plan it out extensively, some they will just buy it, and you're lucky. But I think it makes total sense to have that plan in place, so you also don't get stuck in the conversations over and over again internally, right? It provides a lot of clarity for everyone.
And then there's, on this one, then there's reality sometimes hitting where someone is like, mate, my budget is this, and it's a real budget. I'm not joking, and it needs to be this number. And obviously then jumping through those, 5-6 steps of discounts, it's kind of awkward. So you need to find a way to reality check it.
Yeah.
But it's a really good way to make sure that your reps are not just dishing out the 10, 20, 30% on the first question.
So I think that kind of fits nicely into one of the last pieces. So I recall we started introducing annual price increases, and I felt like, well, sure, that's an easy way to increase revenue, but I didn't really get the purpose of why. And then I heard this thing, well, the smart thing is not the first year you increase the price because you have existing customers paying at a certain level. Next year is when it gets interesting, because if you had just raised the price 5% and you do it again, it's compounding for you. And that's the way to look at it, which is really, really clever. And there's all kinds of other benefits of actually increasing your price. But that's something you started introducing as well as a way to kind of lift and improve.
So this was not at Falcon. This was actually also a Planday thing. And the thing here is, if you have a formal process with an order form and there's a negotiation and the discount, sneaking in a 2, 3, 4, 5% increase every year, it's kind of awkward. So I think in the upper mid-market enterprise, the annual increase in price is a little bit difficult to push through. I think you need to be more intelligent about it and have like actual products, or hey, the whole baseline now is increasing. HubSpot, for example, is excellent at that. But in this case, SMB, maybe lower mid-market, having a piece in your contract that says, there may be a price increase up to 7% a year or something like that. That can, is very easy to slip in, and basically then opens the door for you to, potentially do it, right? And when we did this at, in this case in Planday, it was really successful, and it helped us. It was almost, was Corona. We weren't growing that much at that time. SMB hospitality, there wasn't a soft market at that point. But it basically helped. I think it got us like a full worth of a quarter, basically, of additional revenue coming from our existing customer base, right? By just doing one incremental price increase, and obviously, yes, that totally compounds next year, and that can be a nice source of growth for you. That is very, very cheap in many cases.
I think it's also pretty common these days to actually increase the price. And it's not that you have to be rude about it. The reality is you're going to have an R&D team that keeps on developing the product, so you can justify that increase as well. It's just a matter of how you bring it out.
And now everyone will say, well, inflation.
True.
No, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just waiting for that to roll through the market. Everyone is just going to hike prices by 5 to 8%. And why? Well, inflation. And it makes perfect, sadly, it makes perfect sense for everyone.
Yeah.
Not your fuel or your groceries go up, but your SaaS product as well, right? And there you go, right? So this is probably going to be one of the easier ones to achieve probably this year.
Yeah. Then we have the last and final.
Yes. So it's, we kind of frequently bring it up. It's our, most favorite growth hack. The last one here is on the list is really, run QBRs, not internally, but with your customer. Again, this is something that you probably won't be able to do with SMB folks in that sense. I think this is more of a upper mid-market enterprise play. And really the idea is to put together a quarterly business review, sit down with your customer, and it doesn't need to be you as the leader or something like that. That can be a CSM setup as well. Take them through the things that are obviously important to them and important to you, right? There needs to be kind of a shared space. And then simply ask them, what else can we do for you? What other problems do you have that we maybe can solve for you? And don't pose it as the account manager that needs to target next week, but pose it as the CSM that's curious and really wants to help. You will be surprised about the honest answers you get back. Solve those problems for those customers, and upselling them and retaining them will be less of a problem afterwards. And, that can probably take your gross churn, down by a couple of points. That might accumulate to 10% increase, in total. But it also opens up the opportunity to basically push, potential other pieces of product to them. And yes, sure, do an upsell on top of this.
Yeah, I mean, I've only experienced one SaaS company for me who did it, but I was always looking forward to it because there were so great insights to make more leverage of that solution. And you're actually interested in that because you're paying money for it.
I didn't know that you were a Growblocks customer before.
So it's getting to be planning season.
Yeah.
And I really hope this is a helpful way to frame how you're going to grow. If budgets are coming down, more focus on CAC payback. And even if they're not, right? I still think, switching the mindset a bit and looking at the funnel, where can you actually make a concerted effort? And I think a lot of teams are actually going to be very happy with that approach.
And in reality, it's going to be a mix of those two things, right? Our 7 items here are very much conversion rate or ACV focused. I think the mix will be you will increase your marketing team and your sales team by a couple of percent points, and you will find a couple of those projects, and in combination that might get you to 100%, right? It's not only conversion rate or more resources. It's the combination of both.
Yeah.
Nice. And I think have fun with planning. It's going to come up probably in the next few months. Your CFO will love you for all of these things that we just kind of walked through. And I hope that this got you going and got you to the point of, hey, wait a minute, shouldn't we be doing this instead? Should we, invest in that piece of, increasing our conversion rate and whatsoever? And good luck growing and have fun growing.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Have a
Take
good one.
care. So what does the intern say? Good, there's clapping.
Seal clap.
Or